Okay, this is Yahuda ben Yisrael, and this is the second part of how to hold a woman responsible for her sexual health and behavior. And I'm about to read a law, and this is one of my favorite laws because this is one of the ones where I really get an idea of how people really think about the Holy Father, because when they read a law like this, the first thing out of most people's mouths, including those who are learned out there, the first thing out of their mouths is, see, if I had to deal with a guy like this, I don't want to deal with a guy like this. It's the first thing usually out of their mouth. But that's because those of you who say that, you have no understanding. So hopefully, as you listen to this video, you can get some understanding of how your Creator works. This is one of my favorite laws too. I just get a kick out of this law. Okay, this is Deuteronomy 22, chapter 13, verse 21. If any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her, and give occasions of speech against her, and bring up an evil name upon her, and say, look, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. Then shall the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hateth her. And lo, he hath given occasions of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. And the elders, is verse 18, and the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him, and they shall immerse him in 100 shekels of silver, and give them unto the father of the damsel, because he hath brought up an evil name upon a virgin of Israel, and she shall be his wife, and he may not put her away all his days. But if this thing be true, and the tokens of virginity be not found for the damsel, then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones that she die. Because she hath wrought folly in Israel to play the whore in her father's house, so shalt thou put evil away from among you. Now, when I read that part about she should be stoned to death, a lot of people just jumped up and down and said to themselves, oh my God, see, this is why I don't like this God. This is crazy. This is crazy. Okay. And I'm glad that's how you feel. This is not for you. Then turn the channel. This is not for you. Click, move on. But those of you who want to have some understanding, let me explain to you what this does. Because you have to picture this situation, okay? You have a woman and she's ready to get married. This is what's going on here, okay? Well, guess what? Let's say she has been sleeping around, right? And she hadn't been caught. Hadn't gotten pregnant, hadn't got caught lying with another man, hadn't got caught doing anything, right? But now she's ready to get married. Well, guess what she has to do? She has to go to her father and her mother, and she has to tell her father and her mother that she has played the whore in that household, because her father and mother have to now cover her, and I'll go into how they cover her, right, before she gets married. Because if she gets married and she lays down with that man, right, understand what the scripture said very, very clearly. This is verse 14. And say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. So in other words, she wasn't a virgin. She has to come clean. She has to tell her mother and her father before she gets married that she has been sleeping around in her father's household, or she cannot get married. So that way they can cover her, because if she ends up not telling him and they don't cover her and she gets married, she can get stoned to death. Now, this does a lot of different things. Like I said, this video is about making a woman responsible for her sexual behavior and health. What this does is this puts her in a position to where she has to come clean. Like I said, she has to fess up to her mother and her father. But what's important here too is that her father and her mother has to know this conversation is coming, because their daughter is going to want to get married most likely. So what this does is this sets up the father and the mother, so they're in a position, if they're responsible parents, to have a talk with their daughter, and their son too, but especially their daughter, about sex. Have an age-appropriate discussion with her about her anatomy, which should start by the time they're about 3 or 4 years old. This puts the mother and the father in a position where they have to have a talk with their daughter about sex and sexual behavior, because they know this talk is coming. Now, you hear a lot of people are embarrassed about having this conversation these days. Well, guess what? If they actually knew the law, then they would know that that conversation is coming anyway. It's going to be had. There's no way around it. That's number one. Okay. And that's one way to hold a woman responsible for her sexual health and her behavior, by teaching her about her anatomy when she's a young girl, and teaching her about sex and about the pitfalls of having sex before marriage. As parents, now see, this rests on the parents at this point, right? Okay. again, she has to come clean. So let's say she goes to her father and her mother and she says, I had sex before me. I met this guy. I want to get married, but I had sex before marriage. I'm no longer a virgin. I need your help. Okay. First of all, like I talked about in the first video, she broke the law. There's no way around it. So she has to basically be turned in. She has to be brought before the judge and judged. Now, the only punishment for a woman having sex outside of the household, outside of her father's household before she's married, is if she ends up getting pregnant and she has to get married unless her father refuses, and I read that in the first video. So there's no real set punishment. Now, from a Hebrew Israelite perspective, especially those of us who deal with forgiveness and who deal with the New Testament, it's really simple. It can be anything that the judges say, but from a simple perspective, it will be counseling. It will be a STD test, and probably a hold on how long before she can get married. You know, a simple judgment like that. It's not, a lot of people, because a lot of people read the laws in the Bible, they assume that it's about this harsh punishment no matter what. But see, even in this situation, she's able to come forward and redeem herself and be redeemed because of her sin, because of her transgression. And for those of you, especially those who just read the New Testament, you know a little bit about that. It's called grace. So what she has here is an opportunity to get grace and to be covered for her transgressions. Now, what did I just say? I said an STD test and counseling. That should be the first thing that she gets because it's a health issue. A lot of people focus on the fact that it's a sin in the sense that she played the whore. She let her lust get the best of her. That's still a mental health care issue or spiritual health care issue. And there is a healthcare system in the scriptures, and I will do a video about that too. So that's what you have going on here. You have a physical health issue, meaning that she needs to have an STD test, okay? And you have an emotional, spiritual health care issue because she needs counseling for the sin that she committed. It's just that simple. It's not that complicated. And to bring it to 2012, guess what? Those are things that women are supposed to be getting now if they are sexually active, according to the Center for Disease Control, especially in the black community. As a matter of fact, if I was a black man and I had a teenage daughter about 15 years old, and I even suspected that she was sexually active, according to the Center for Disease Control, she needs to be getting tested, I think, for gonorrhea once a year. She needs to be being tested for other STDs before she turns 18 years old. This is what they recommend. And she needs to have, of course, counseling on the pitfalls and dangers of sex, and even safe sex, which is, I mean, even in today's day and time, even if you disagree with sex at all before marriage, which I do, I mean, we all know situations happen. So to not give her instructions on how to have safe sex, it's almost like, you know, it's a dangerous thing to do, and it's a dangerous policy to have if you're a father. So, like I said, what this law does is this puts the woman in a position where she has to come clean to her father before she gets married. She has to get put into the system. And the important part about that is that her health is taken care of. Her physical and emotional health is taken care of once she gets in that system. Now, once she gets in that system, and at this point, her father knows she's no longer a virgin. Her mother knows she's no longer a virgin. The judges know she's no longer a virgin. And the priest knows she's no longer a virgin. And at this point, everybody knows. So when she goes to her fiance and she says, hey, I'm no longer a virgin, he says, oh, okay, because most men, you know, if a man is in love, he's like, oh, baby, I don't care. Even in those times, you know, hey, baby, I don't care. That's fine. Let's get married anyway. All she has to do is say, okay, everybody knows I'm no longer a virgin too. Sign this piece of paper right here. Because this is a legal system. Sign this piece of paper right here saying that you acknowledge I'm no longer a virgin, and we're all good, and we'll hand that to my father. So on that night when she has sex with her husband, her new husband, he can't jump up and say, well, you didn't tell me anything. Oh, no. Because we all know what happens sometimes when we get angry and we're in relationships. Men know the things that they are capable of doing, and women know the things that they're capable of doing. This is real life here. So yeah, he needs to sign something that acknowledges he knows she's no longer a virgin. It's as simple as that. The father needs to have a copy. Copy needs to be with the judges at the courthouse, because this is an actual legal system. This is and it has an actual justice system with judges and officers of the court. So that's why I love this law so much. Because no matter what, if you're a woman in an Israelite culture, you're going to have to come clean about your sexual behavior. You're going to have to do it. There's no way around it. There's no way to get around that. It's not going to happen. Because if you step into this situation and you found somebody who you love, you want to get married, and you step into the situation, and if you're an Israelite woman and you marry this man and you don't come clean about your sexual past, okay, or you don't at least, before you get married, get some type of inspection to make sure your hymen is not broken. If you don't cover yourself, then you are in deep, deep trouble. You're stupid at this point. I don't mean any harm, but everybody will look at you like you're stupid at this point. Because as a woman, she reads and knows the penalties. Any woman who's involved in this situation reads and knows the penalties if her husband decides to get mad and says, hey, you weren't a virgin when we got married. So that's why I like this law. It puts a woman in a position where she has to take responsibility for her actions, for her sexual behavior before she was married. Now, there's nothing like that out here today. Absolutely nothing. And we see the results of it, especially in the black community. We see the results of women not taking responsibility for their sexual behavior, and we see the results of women getting paid for their sexual behavior, getting benefits for it. So hopefully you all learned something from this video. Again, follow me on at Old Testament Law. If you have any questions, hit me up on oldtestamentlaw@gmail.com. Shalom.